And we are live. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Miro Guys podcast. I am Rahman,
And I'm Syafiq.
and today our topic is the book club.
The book club, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything is going to be about reading books, online articles, whatever there is to read. We're going to talk about it today. Okay, Rahman? Yeah.
Okay, sure. So Shafiq, how are you, man?
I'm doing, pretty fine. MCO has been like it's been a pretty long period already. There's a ample of time for me to do a lot of reading, also gaming, but occasionally I do gaming. But yeah, I've done pretty much read up a couple of books already. Yeah, so that's why we're here today to talk about it. Yeah. How about you, Rahman?
That's good to hear, man. Same here. I've been downloading a lot of ebooks. Catching up on my readings. Read some things that I don't know. I usually don't have the time for, and so far I'm just trying to be productive and definitely learning some new things from reading interesting books has been pretty helpful in getting me through these MCOs.
Yeah, like, what kind of genre of books do you do?
Oh, I read anything I can get my hands on, essentially.
Yeah. Like non-fiction, fiction, history, everything.
I've been really focusing a bit on nonfiction, self-development, a little bit on history as well. And yeah, how about you, man? How about you?
Pretty much a whole lot of nonfiction, because I want to gain some kind of value after all of this MCO is over. I don't want to be like the same person I was before MCO, because I think that this is the best period that I have in order for me to better myself, to like actually learn something new, pick up some kind of like a life philosophy. I don't know. I don't know about what yet. But I've been like, immersing myself in books, particularly about business, economics, entrepreneurship. Yeah, because like in this COVID-19 period, we can see a lot of, business going down and corporations are laying off people. But there's this one particular niche of business area which is currently flourishing, which is the online business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of niche of business that I'm currently looking forward to. And I've been reading quite extensively on that topic. I've been buying books, I've been searching up articles. So that's practically what I've been doing for the past few weeks.
That's good, man. That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, I, on the other hand, have been reading things from economics, a little bit on history, but not really like history. It's more related to the history of the industry, in particular oil and gas. Like, recently there has been a really huge price drop in oil and gas. And like the more I read about the history of oil and gas, the more I realize that these turbulences in the oil economy is not really something new.
Happened in the past already.
It happened in the past like so many times already. And it might not be this worse. It might not be to the extent of which we're suffering right now, but you look at things like the Gulf War, for example. This is one I've been reading extensively about, like the rise of dictatorship nations. And
in the Yom Kippur War. I think I've read about the Yom Kippur War.
The
Arabs, they like mass produce oil.
Mm-hmm.
Did they mass produce oil, or did they stop production of oil, which in turn made the price of oil rise, and in turn made the economy of America suffer? I think that's what it is about, right?
Yes.
It happened back then. It's actually kind of like a cycle.
It is a cycle. Rise of dictatorship nations. It's all oil, man. Like I'm telling you.
Definitely. Yeah, I think there's this book that I should recommend to you and also the audience. That it's titled "Confessions of an Economic Hitman," and in this book, it's kind of like a conspiracy, but it's an enjoyable read, in which it explains how the United States are sending envoys acting as agents to countries that have mineral resources like oil and gold, and involving in the politics, exploiting the politicians and also the management and administration of the country in order for them to benefit from the natural resources themselves. Installing dictators that are in favor of the United States so that they in the future can benefit from the oil and the natural resources. Yeah, I think it's a very good read though. Let's see. Um, fine. So, I mean, like regarding to this topic already, I have to ask, I really, really do have to ask, why read in the first place, right? Why should we read in the first place? What do you think?
Why do I read? Like for me, it has been something that I'm naturally inclined to. Like I would read anything I could get my hands on. It's just something I genuinely enjoy doing, you know.
I see.
And to learn something new, to actually like open my horizon and widen my eyes, and essentially exposing myself into things I wouldn't normally be exposed to, is just such a good benefit and such a good thing to strive forward to, especially for personal development. How about you? Why do you read? Yeah.
I mean, like, I started reading when I was like around 18. Before I was 18, I despised books a lot. But when I entered the age of 18, I see myself as a, you know, I view the real world differently because once I entered into university, I met different types of people. I was encountering different situations that I was not prepared of when I was back in school. And they didn't teach me about all of these, street skills, all of these soft skills, all of these other knowledge that is actually fundamental for you to survive in the real world, right? And I find that all of these skills are taught in books. I mean, like, think about it. Books are written by people who have already experienced hell on earth, and they're writing it down in order for communities, in order for readers like us to benefit from it. Imagine imagine if one day Bill Gates, for example, the richest person in the world, imagine if one day Bill Gates wanted to start a company with you. Would you say yes? Of course, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if one day Warren Buffett came to you and told you like, hey, I'm going to show you my trick in the investing world. I'm going to teach you how to invest and show you all of the tricks that I have done for me to become the richest investor in the world, right?
Yep.
Imagine if you're friends with Barack Obama and you had the opportunity to learn about leadership from Obama, right? Or any kind of idols or icons that you look up to. And in my answer to that is, it's very possible. These people, although they are not with us physically, they have written about their experiences, about their insights, their philosophy, their tips and tricks in books, right? Reading a book that is written by Warren Buffett is quite similar to sitting with Warren Buffett together, having a cup of coffee and having conversation about all of these topics. I mean, I think a lot of people are overlooking this, especially books. People just view books as some sort of like a couple of pages that don't really mean anything. They don't really bring any value. Whereas I view books as kind of like, in games where you can upgrade skills, right? You go and encounter, you do quests in games and they give you like some sort of upgrades and skills. There are perks for you to upgrade. And I think books are quite similar to that. I learned a lot of things about myself just by reading. Nobody taught me about stuff that was, rudimentary in order for me to survive in the real world, such as, especially like on the topic of personal finance, for example, right? The rule of 80%, the rule of 2080. Why is it important for me to know about taxes? Why is it important for me to know how to manage my finances? how many percentage of my income should I spend or save? What is the stock market, right? I bet you yourself have never heard of the stock market when back in school, right?
Yeah.
No teacher ever taught us about the stock market, whereas the stock market is what keeps the economy running, right?
Yeah.
Nobody taught us about insurance, whereas the insurance is very crucial for us to survive in this modern world, in this capitalistic world, right? That is like what I learned from reading. So yeah, books to me are actually some sort of like a treasure. You have the same opinion?
Yeah, and I actually want to add a little bit on that, because you
Yeah.
said a little bit about, hanging out with these people that you wouldn't normally be able to have access to otherwise, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like books written by people that have been, like, successful, that's made it in life, and they are actually teaching you all these things, you kind of get an insight as to how they run things and how they operate,
Definitely.
yeah, and how they function as a person, as a business leader,
Definitely.
as a president, right?
Yes.
As an
Yes.
investor, as a very successful investor, you
Yes.
get a sense
Yeah.
of how do they think, how do they make these decisions, and how they
Yes. Yeah.
inadvertently behave as a person.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely. Definitely. And you can learn from their mistakes.
exactly,
You,
exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
You can avoid making the same mistakes
Mm,
that cost them a lot by
mm,
just reading their book and avoiding that same mistake, so that you
mm.
can be probably one day more successful than these
Oh,
people, right?
yeah.
I think that is what books give to you. It gives you a lot of value in that sense. But Rahman,
Mm,
we're speaking right now in the context of nonfiction books
yeah.
that generally like life manuals,
Mm,
teaching you about instructions on how to do this, how to do that.
mm.
What about fiction books? Have you ever like immerse yourself in a good fiction book and benefit from it before?
Um, Here's the thing. I see fiction books, right? Like, when it comes to what I've learned through reading fiction books, it's mostly a
Yeah.
study of character. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
A good books, especially good books with very diverse, multi-layered, three-dimensional characters, you actually get to
Uh-huh.
see, you actually get to learn an insight. You actually get an insight as to how the human condition really is. Because I feel like when it comes to fiction books, the
Mm-hmm.
author will write the books as a reflection, of their daily lives, as a reflection from their own
Mm.
experiences. Like J.R.R. Tolkien, for example, that's a really good one. He
Yeah.
created Lord of the Rings based on his experience serving in World War I, and what sort of horror, unspeakable horrors that experience have essentially left a mark on him. And, he
Mm.
created like these magnificent creatures and this universe, and they even have their own sets of languages and
Mm.
just such a rich lore. And come and think of it, like the fact that this entire experience, I mean, this entire like literature, this entire work of literature comes
Mm-hmm.
from a traumatic experience, is something to really think about.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's not true that, fiction book does not give us any value. It does give us
It
value
is,
in
it
terms of
is.
reflection and in terms of, stimulating our imagination on
Mm,
life, getting to experience what the author is experienced, getting to visualize what the characters in the fiction book is going through. I think that that's such a very, very valuable moment for a reader, because they don't necessarily have to go through the same hardship, but they themselves are already immersed in that situation, and they are already being swollen up by all of these experiences, these rich and
yep.
beautiful experiences that the characters are being experiencing in the book, right?
Agree,
Okay,
agreed.
I think that that brings me to the topic of speed reading. Have you heard of speed reading before?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the concept, although I never really tried it myself.
Well,
Uh,
so I did try a few techniques of speed reading before. And right now, currently, to make it short, my personal view of speed reading is that it achieves a goal in which you consume a lot of stuff in a short span of time. But in terms of comprehension,
Yep.
there's a little bit of lacking over there, right? I mean, when you read a good book, for example, you wouldn't want to read it like in a whim, in a fast mode, right? You would want to read
No.
each and every sentences and every word, and then immersing yourself in those ideas, getting the time to understand and comprehend the message that the author is giving you, right? But of course, one of the techniques of speed reading is that, scanning, skimming, and actually reading, right? Scanning is like you just take a glance at the cover of the book and opening the index of the book, the table of contents,
Yeah.
and then like scanning 3 seconds per page, from the beginning until the end of the book. Skimming is actually you taking like 10 seconds, a little bit longer, reading the pages, but not necessarily spending a lot of time on each and every page, just to capture the key words that are contained in each page. And after that comes the reading part. So reading in a context of speed reading, there are two techniques for you to do it. First technique is by using a pen, and using a pen to line up the words that you are reading. You can imagine that, right?
Yep.
Like yeah, you can
It's like
using a
reading a
pen or
textbook, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
using
reading textbook.
pens
Yeah.
or pointers,
Yeah,
so that you don't necessarily have to read the sentence over and over again, right? When you point your finger or a pen at the sentences that you are reading, it automatically forces you to understand that sentences, because there's no turning back, right? It takes effort for you to read back that sentences. Another technique of speed reading is for you to read, like, using your eyes, because your eyes has this peripheral vision. And believe it or not, you can read like 5 words in one glance, right? So
right.
just by one glance at a page, reading 5 words, and then move your eye to the next part of the page, the right part of the page, and reading another 5 words. There you go. Just only 2 movements of your eye, and you can already read a whole full line of sentences on a page of a book. Sound familiar to you?
It sounds very
But
Sherlock-ish.
yeah,
Yeah.
I admit that the technique of speed reading, it actually achieves the goal of speed reading, but in terms of comprehension, it does not really do the job, right? Imagine doing speed reading on a textbook,
Oh
and
yeah.
then you'll be like disappointed when you enter the exam hall and trying to answer. Like, I've experienced this before, and to top it off worse, I did try to do speed reading on a mathematics textbook.
Oh yikes.
I didn't do the exercises. I just read, and I did speed reading, like thinking like I could definitely answer this tomorrow, just because I finished reading it, right? What about your experiences though? Talking about like reading for the purpose of answering examinations. What
Um.
about that? Do you think like
Yeah. I think the thing is about me, right? I enjoy
yeah,
learning, and I enjoy
yeah,
taking my time learning something. You know,
mm-hmm.
that's why I feel like speed reading sort of defeats the purpose for me. Like I can see why why some people do it. Like some people actually have limited amount
Yeah,
of time to finish a book and to
mm-hmm.
obtain the necessary information that
Mm-hmm.
they need. But for me,
Yeah,
nothing beats just the experience of sitting down, digesting the words as they fall from the book
taking your
into your mind,
time. Yeah.
and then just take your time just
Mm,
learning it, and absorbing it, and try your best to actually apply the knowledge you've learned, whether it's like textbook knowledge to be applied in your assignments, your examinations, or it's life knowledge, like you said, like your
yeah.
businesses, um,
Mm,
investment tactics, finance and stock
yeah.
markets, and so on. I like
Life
to take the
goals.
time to learn. Yeah.
Taking our time, right?
Uh-huh.
Because not everybody can like absorb all those knowledge in a short span of time, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's why I
Well,
think it's not for me. I
yeah.
understand why people do it, but it's not really for me.
Yeah, some people do it just for the sake of, they want to tell their friends that, hey, I finished 5 books in the span of 1 month, and then you go and ask them, okay, what did you learn from it?
Yeah.
And ask them, they can't really give you a proper answer. I think that the purpose of reading it's simple, it's conventional, it's for you to gain values, for you to gain knowledge from it, right? But coming back to the reading for examination part, I love learning. I really, really love learning, but I don't like studying. I don't
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
studying for the purpose of, regurgitating the knowledge and putting it down on a piece of paper for exam purposes in an examination hall. I don't like that idea. I like learning for the sake of, knowing stuff, for the sake of applying it in the future. I don't like studying for the sake of going into the exam hall, answering the sheets, and then go out the hall and forget everything already, right? That happens a lot of times for me. Yeah.
I think that's why the essence of knowledge is not actually how much you know inside your head. It's actually how much you can apply in your how much you can apply,
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Which is
although
something
I
that's very
agree
profound.
that
Yeah.
it's definitely profound.
Mm-hmm.
Although I agree that, it's good to have a lot of knowledge in your head, but it's better if you can apply those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of reading, I mean, there's this, in this modern area, there's digital age, globalization, YouTube, Google, everything else. There's all these articles that compresses knowledge that is contained in books, in 300-page books, and compress it in an article that is bite-sized, and you can just read it in a span of 3 to 4 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it gives the same impact to you reading an article? Does it give the same impact compared to reading a book about that topic, right? What do you think?
Not exactly. Because for me, when it comes to reading books, I like to take the time to reflect and ponder upon what I've just read. Whereas an article sort of not actually let me to do that. I mean, it let me do that to some extent, but not to an extent of which a
I
book is
see.
able to do so.
Yes,
So yeah,
yes.
it is not that it's effective.
It compresses everything already, and it already does the thinking for you, right? In
Mm-hmm.
articles, there's introduction, the content, and then there's a conclusion. There's no room for you to actually think critically and question the content, because it's very, very bite size. It's very, very compressed, right? But what about people who don't read, but instead they listen to podcasts like this? Instead, they watch educational YouTube videos talking about philosophy, like the School of Life, for example, Crash Course in YouTube. Those are not about reading. Those are you just listening and you just watching these videos of people talking in front of the screen, showing infographics, showing videos. Does that have the same impact reading has? Or do you generally believe that reading is the way to go? I mean, videos are cool, but in order for you to gain in-depth knowledge, you should read. What do you think?
I see reading as simply a means to an end, and that end is ultimately learning, the learning experience. So I see book as simply a tool that help you learn something. Videos can be a tool, an online course can be a tool, an article can be a tool, So to each his own, it's very different for each person. I didn't see a person who don't read or spend their time listening to podcasts as any less intelligent as someone who would spend 12 hours a day in the library just burying their
Correct,
heads in
right?
books. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But reading is a very traditional method, right?
It is.
These podcasts, these videos, it's relatively new in the history of mankind. We don't even know what it is yet, right? I mean, all of the history of mankind, people read from physical books, from pages that are made from paper, not from pixels on a screen, right? But I think this phenomena opens a lot of opportunities especially in terms of accessibility. right? Especially in Malaysia.
Mhm.
I mean, me myself, I believe that books are pretty expensive.
Mhm.
Don't you think so? Very expensive, right?
Yeah.
A trip to a general bookstore would cost you like how much, right? Per book?
And then like how much a book costs, you
Yeah,
know?
80 ringgit,
Yeah, 80
100
ringgit. Yeah,
ringgit.
100 ringgit.
Yeah.
Mm.
But instead, you have all these beautiful content on YouTube, podcasts, Udemy, right? And I think in terms of accessibility, even the average person that is not wealthy can access these content and benefit it the same as people who already had access it in terms of wealth, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We are very lucky to live in this generation.
Exactly, because I feel like, but again, like back to your point, right? When you think about it, podcasts and essentially like this way of learning, this verbal way of learning has been actually around for some time. You know, back then people used to do sermons, you know, they used to gather and they listen to a person of knowledge, a prophet, a messiah, for example.
Ah,
Yeah.
I see.
So that is actually one way of learning. But yet back to the back to the actually main point. Yeah, books are expensive. It's has definitely been an issue of accessibility. And I feel like people who have access to this vast amount of knowledge, they should really try to make it more accessible to everyone.
Accessible.
Yeah.
Sharing it to people, right?
Uh-huh.
Knowledge should be free.
Yep. Knowledge should be
That's
free.
the free. Knowledge should be free.
Knowledge should be
Education is expensive, but knowledge should be accessible to everyone.
Knowledge is not a privilege, it's a right. It's a right for
It is
every
a
human
right.
being to educate themselves to the best of their capabilities.
So I think it's safe for us to say that, you know, reading, like in your own words, is a means to an end, is a means to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
But there are also other options for you to gain knowledge, not necessarily by reading. Reading is cool. Watching videos is cool.
Yeah.
Listening to podcasts like this is also cool.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you gain knowledge, and then it's good. Like,
It's
you know,
good.
life's good.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot for our audience today to gain in terms of value. Yeah. Rahman, do you have any like last messages, last words to say to our audience before we part?
Knowledge is power, and that power should be given to everyone. Yeah.
Definitely. That's good. That's good. Yeah. I don't have like a catchy or fancy phrase to that,
Right.
but I think that everyone should read. Every single person should read.
Yes.
If we encounter a person of high intelligence, we should ask the person what books he reads. That's all.
Definitely.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks for listening to our podcast for today.
And we'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Yeah, we'll see you
and stay
guys.
safe.
Take care, guys.